6:23, so it is Wednesday. It's hot out there, and this is 1320 WILS. Bill O'Reilly, he hasn't talked about it on his show, but his child custody court proceedings have been very uncomfortable for him. One of the things that has come out were these sealed court transcripts accusing him essentially of spousal abuse. How could this kind of information get out? Well, let's talk to Tim Hoch, civil attorney, divorce attorney, also HochLawFirm.com. Hey, Tim, great to have you here.
Thank you very much. Good to be here.
Yeah, this, I guess it's interesting because they got divorced, right? They had the split custody, and then they came back to his wife wanted full custody. Is that kind of a typical thing where you have the divorce, and then a few years later, then you get into the child fight?
Well, it does happen on occasion, but courts really like to tamp that down. They don't like to go revisit those issues unless there's some finding that one or the other parent with primary custody is unfit, or something has happened in the meantime that caused them to be unfit.
Because they want it essentially all resolved right at the moment of the divorce, then?
Yeah, they want to basically have something that's going to stay in place until the kids reach majority. So they are very, very reluctant to do much to overturn their previous decision. And like I said, unless there's some clear and convincing evidence that the circumstances have changed.
Yeah, the fact that these were sealed court transcripts, and from what I understand, Gawker published them. They say that one of these folks that worked with the daughter, a court-appointed forensic examiner, testified that the daughter, O'Reilly's daughter, claimed she witnessed her father dragging her mother down a staircase by her neck. Well, what are we as the public to think when we hear that?
Well, first of all, there are so many allegations that are made in these highly, highly emotionally charged cases, right? I mean, people say all kinds of things, and I'm not saying it's untrue. I'm just saying you have to consider the source, and you have to consider the circumstances under which those allegations are made. So that's number one. Number two is I am always sick to my stomach when I hear about documents that were once sealed and they're unsealed because of some, underling in an law office that decides they're going to make a buck off of it or something like that.
Is that what that is, do you think? Or do you think it's an attorney trying to push Bill O'Reilly somehow?
Well, I don't think. Listen, if it's a lawyer, they ought to be sanctioned or disbarred if they allow those kinds of things that are previously sealed. Mm-hmm. It sounds to me like it's maybe someone in the law office who got wind of it and thought they'd make $1 or $2 on it. Of course, there's really not much you can do to those people. I mean, what are you going to do? Go sue them for some civil damages or something like that? Mm-hmm. Now, if they're an officer of the court, like a lawyer, then of course you can sanction them or bring some sort of ethical proceeding against him.
Right. Now, according to the documents, it was his daughter that said that to this court-appointed forensics examiner. Does that? I mean, how does that affect that information? How does that skew it?
Well, I mean, are you talking about with respect to whether it's going to impact
with the daughter? Yeah, with the daughter side, because from what I understand, the court then gave the mother, right, the ex-wife, full custody. So, what does that indicate? Do they essentially believe the story then?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they'd have to have some sort of independent corroboration of it, and sometimes it depends on, what were the circumstances under which this person was seen? Was it a court-appointed psychiatrist, or was it someone who was hired by just the mom? Mm-hmm. If it's a court-appointed psychiatrist, then of course the court's going to put a lot of stock in what they have to say, and probably a lot of stock in their credibility. So that's really going to speak volumes, and that's usually why they seal them, right? They say, you know what, we're going to subject this person to this examination, and we want them to be completely transparent and open about this. And just to guarantee this, we're going to have them sealed. Now, of course, it didn't work in this particular case, but it's just an awful thing when things like that go on.
Is this typical then to get the children to speak, let's say, badly or reveal things about one or the other parent? Is that how it works?
Well, it depends again. I mean, look, most kids over the age of 14 will have a say in where they want to live and what the custody will be. Mm-hmm. And, of course, that goes up and is given greater weight the older the child gets. So 14, it's less than when they're, 15, 16, 17. But, kids are really and of course it depends on the judge, but a lot of kids are given a great deal of latitude with respect to where they want to live.
Are they prodded, though, to tell the story like this or to reflect back on any kind of abuse? Do you think the mother may have said, hey, be sure to mention this to this examiner?
Oh, sure. Yes, definitely. And you see that quite a bit. I think that judges, of course, I think there's probably a dearth of really qualified psychiatrists and psychologists in this field. So if you know anybody that's going into a particular area and they're interested in this, they can look at it, because it's hard to find independent psychiatrists and psychologists to do this kind of work. But their testimony is given a great deal of weight in these circumstances, a great deal. Sometimes they're the only thing. When mom and dad are lobbing complaints at each other, they're really the only thing the court has.
I mean, because this wasn't any kind of, this wasn't a court case on this assault, because there was never any police report on this incident. So how does it work? So the kids say something, it gets in the transcripts, and then somebody can just get a hold of it and put it out into the public this way?
Right. I mean, I guess that's the case. Now, most lawyers and law firms are very careful about what is protected by protective order. So, for instance, if we have something in our office that's by protective order, we have a file. If it's a paper copy, we have a file cabinet. We keep it in its lock, and we don't know anybody in it who's not, like my legal assistant or somebody like that. Because if it's just a runner or a file clerk or something, we don't let them have access to that. And of course, we have restricted access to our online category of documents as well. In
terms of, obviously, his prominence is what led to the document being released. Have you been involved in divorce cases of someone that's well known, either locally or otherwise?
Right. Yeah. People that are known, well known locally. Yeah. Sure. And those are you try to keep from the very, very beginning.
Yeah. Are they particularly nervous about their information potentially getting out then?
Yeah, I think so. And a lot of that, of course, has to do with financial information. Of course, there are allegations sometimes of different abuse or cruelty and whatnot. But most of the time, folks are concerned about, I don't want people to know what my tax returns say. I don't want them to know, where I invest my money and things of that nature. So you go down immediately, and the very first thing you get is called temporary orders. And in the temporary orders, you ask the judge to seal these things. And the judges are good about giving you that.
So have you seen cases yourself, in cases you've dealt with, where kids have been brought out to talk about these kinds of allegations?
Absolutely, yeah, and it's rare. It really, I think it's rare in terms of just being vindictive or spiteful or used for that purpose. Usually, if someone makes such a strong allegation, it needs to be followed up on. I'm not saying it's always right or that it's in the proper context, but it definitely needs to be taken serious each time.
Now, they've given her full custody, but from what I understand, still being kind of discussed. I mean, can this thing just go on and on in terms of these custody issues?
Unfortunately, yes, and I say that because I've seen it. As a practical matter, it does go on, and
as in what? You can challenge any decision by the court?
Well, yes and no. You can challenge any decision for a certain period of time, and like I said, as circumstances change, if you think that the person who has primary custody is unfit for some particular reason, abuse or cruelty or something, then you can challenge it at any time and have the judge try to petition the judge. But now you can't do it in sort of a malicious way. So.
Well, I mean, obviously the tricky thing is when you have the money to keep going, right? The temptation is to keep fighting. Is that what you find?
That's it. Yeah. That's it.
Sometimes being broke might help.
The pocketbook is what controls this.
Yeah. So sometimes if the money's not there, they can actually come to terms, huh?
Well, it's funny how folks kind of decide that they're going to come to terms when there's no more to pay the lawyer, right? I mean, you see that quite a bit, unfortunately.
Wow. Maybe that's where it should start. Put the money to the side and see if they can come to terms first, huh?
Well, and that's what I do with my clients every time they come in. I said, look, what are your goals? Because you're getting ready to spend a lot of money on this. Let's figure out what you've got and what you can afford to spend and figure out a budget, because I don't want you to come to me in 2 years and say, hey, King's X, we're done, and we haven't accomplished what we want to accomplish.
Tim Hoch, divorce attorney and civil attorney for that matter, HochLawFirm.com. Tim, thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Have a good week.
You also